Hello students and welcome back to Lore of the Iron Kingdoms with me, Professor Caster. Today we are going to discuss the Gatormen of Western and Morin. As mentioned, we did have a poll out a while ago before the Mark II or Mark IV two-player box set came out, and we got really involved in that. But we will get back to this, and we will be having Professor Clocksworth read a bunch of the mini lores on it on the shorts. But, of course, we do need to go over the history of the Gatormen of Western Morin, so we'll be doing that today. And before we begin, thank you guys so much for checking into class today. We always appreciate it. And if you are enjoying these, please hit that like button, subscribe, comment. Let me know if you enjoy playing the Gatormen or enjoy going up against the Gatormen. Honestly, I've gone up against the Gatormen a few times and do not enjoy it at all because they can get to a very bricky style of play, making them very hard to take out. But I also play with them as well, so they are always fun. Also, a huge thank you to Steamforge for letting us continue to read this fantastic legacy lore. And without further ado, let's get into it. Gatormen of Western and Morin. By tooth, claw, and spirit. The dark swamps and bayous of Western and Morin harbor many dangers within their musky waters, and countless of those who dare travel their muddy byways meet bad ends in the gullet of some monstrous amphibious beast. One race of elusive reptilians have claimed these bogs and marshes as their domain, furiously defending their ways of life from the encroaching threats of civilization. The Gatormen are incredibly tough, physically powerful, and skillful hunters that have long endured the challenges and dangers of their swamps. Though their appearance might lead some to believe them little more than savage beasts, Gatormen possess a craftiness and intelligence that is a match of many more civilized species and displays a high level of patience and cunning that makes them exceedingly dangerous predators. Gatormen can be violent and even bloodthirsty at times, but if approached by outsiders with the proper respect and deference, they are often quite willing to trade for goods normally unavailable to them. And some may even be willing to act as guides. In fact, some Gatormen have established peaceful relations with neighboring Trollbloods creels and human settlements. Conversely, riled Gatormen are some of the most implacable foes in Western and Morin, especially in their natural habitat. Those who have earned the wrath of Gatormen tribes live with the fear that every floating log or tangled grove of cypress trees could hide a war party potentially waiting for their target to lower his guard. Most Gatormen live in small tribes numbering between a handful to several dozen adults. All adults are capable warriors, and there is little difference between the males and females in regard to size and physical prowess. Each tribe is led by one of its bokors, who is a combination of priest and mystic. These shamans invoke the name of Kosk, the bestial alligator god the Gatormen worship, as well as calling forth the many lingering dark spirits that populate the bogs and marshes. As often as not, the spirit bokor draws for their power are ones they enslaved at the time of death, or caught in the aftermath of battles before they could pass to the arcane. Bokors rely on their own rites and totems to facilitate this, making use of skulls and other ritual tools carved of bone. Other long-dead allies under their control are the ancient and potent natural spirits that have existed within the swamp for millennia. The Gatormen revere their greatest ancestors, and sometimes these spirits refuse to depart and instead haunt their ancestral lands. Remaining violently territorial, the stagnant nature of the swamp preserves these spirits and those of certain great reptilian beasts and allowed them to grow over the centuries by feasting on the spiritual essence of other creatures that die within these fettered waters. Bokors can awaken the spirits by ritual, feeding them with sacrifices of blood and life forces, empowering them to lend their strength and vitality to the Bokor and his allies, or to inflict horrific curses on his enemies. Despite being incredibly powerful warriors, the Gatormen have largely remained uninvolved in the countless wars that have consumed Western and Morin. Instead, they have focused their efforts on battling the other creatures dwelling in the dank swamps they inhabit. Their primary foe have been the bog trogs, fish-like humanoids skilled in ambushes and stealthy assassinations. The two races have fought over the meager resources of Western and Morin swamps for longer than either can remember. However, the Gatormen often have the advantage over the bog trogs, who lack powerful leadership and are individually weaker. In addition, the rare presence of Gatormen warlocks, who command terrifying reptilian warbeast, has further cemented their race's dominance in their natural habitat. Typically, the Bogtrog tribes are either subjugated by the more powerful neighbors or driven out. And it looks like we have a little side note here we're going to read. It is called the Worship of Kosk. And I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. It's K-O-S-S-K. So I'm going to say Kosk. Gatormen across Western Morn pay homage to the primal alligator god they call Kosk, an entity they credit with their creation, and which embodies feasting, reptilian patience, bloodthirst, and the hunt. Though worship of this god is nearly universal among the Gatormen, specific rites vary across the region, as do totemic depictions of it. In some areas, as is shown as the Gatormen, but in others it appears as a more bestial alligator, its gigantic maw open wide to swallow the world. The leader of this religious ceremonies in their villages, Bokors, conduct sacrificial feasts and rites, calling on Kosk's name while invoking their magic. Each Bokor has a different attitude towards the entity and the power it offers, with some relying more heavily upon minor spirits sought out and bound amid the swamps and marshes. Some Bokors treat Kosk as simply the most powerful and greatest of these spirits rather than offering it as a respect due a god. Gatormen shamans draw upon the power of predatory spirits in the swamp as well. Just as Kosk prepares to devour the world and absorb its strength, the Gatormen Bokors and warlocks embrace the act of absorbing an enemy's power through the ritual consumption of its flesh. In fact, much of the dark magic and rituals that make up Gatormen mysticism revolve around this concept. Outsiders such as the Blackclads of the Circle Oberos insist Kosk is a primitive totem embodying a single form of the beast of all shapes. It has been common throughout tribal cultures of various species of predatory totems to be identified and revered, each being a form of the devourer worm, who encompasses them all. Gatormen Bokars consider it blasphemous and disrespectful to link their faith to any other power, and have reacted violently to Blackclad efforts to take advantage of this alleged connection. And I imagine they do, because Gatormen are very particular to not being disrespected by any other race, including races of men or other Gatormen tribes. So be wary. But let's continue. Gatormen organization. Gatormen tribes are traditionally independent of another and are seldom cooperative. Indeed, fierce competition between rival tribes invariably leads to bloodshed when food supplies is scarce. Generally, each village is led by the most feared Bokor. However, extraordinarily powerful Bokors occasionally rise up to bring multiple tribes together under their yoke, creating small fiefdoms within the deepest swamps and marshes. Gatormen warriors are some of the most physically imposing combatants in all of Amoran, and typically Gatorman stands well over 7 feet tall and is armored head to tail in thick, horny scales. Though their natural armaments, tooth, claw, and whipping tails, are fearsome enough, Gatormen warriors can wield a variety of heavy, two-handed crushing and cleaving weapons. So armed Gatormen hunting parties can reduce warjacks to scrap metal in minutes, and a lone warrior can take an entire troop of enemies. Gatormen are fiercely protective of their kills. In fact, it is the height of disrespect to consume the flesh of an enemy slain by another. To do so is to invite instant and lethal retaliation, or at the very least, lasting blood fused with the wrong Gatormen. Though Gatormen warriors invariably make up the heart of any Bokar's warband, other races such as Bogtrogs are often pressed into service. The Bogtrogs are simply given the option of adding their strength to that of the Gatormen or else nourishing it with their flesh. Despite the strained relationship, Bogtrogs and Gatormen complement each other's individual skills. Bogtrogs bring numbers and an element of stealth and subtlety to Gatormen warbands that are often lacking. And in turn, Gatormen back up the Bogtrogs with their raw physical power and toughness. Another race found fighting alongside Gatormen are the Swamp Gobbers. These creatures are hardly seen as a threat by Gatormen and do not share the Bogtrogs' intensely adversary relationship with them. In fact, Swamp Gobbers willingly work for the Gatormen Bokors and Warlocks in return for food and protection. Strange creatures such as magic-eating horrors known as Thralls and the incorporeal Feralgeist are captured or enslaved by the Bokors and thrust into battle when their abilities are deemed useful. In addition, a number of exotic frog-like croaks that hail from the swamps and jungles of the distant east have recently sought protection from and offered their services to several influential Bokors in the southern swamps. These creatures originated on the isles to the south territory held by the Scorn, who captured them and hauled them into the west. The ones that have escaped find themselves far from home and seem to view Gatormen with superstitious reverence. The Gatormens are certainly powerful in their own right, but what makes them truly frightening is their command over the great and terrible beasts lurking within the murky depths of their swamps. Gatormen warlocks can call upon a number of horrific reptilian warbeasts, every bit as devastating on the battlefield as any found in Western Morn's various diverse fighting forces. The Gatormen have an affinity with these monsters, and their own reptilian brains can slice through the bestial instincts that fill the minds of something like a bull snapper and command its actions. Gatormen Bokors believe the ability is a gift from Kosk itself, allowing its children to command the creatures that bear its likeness. Though Gatormen are largely reclusive, they are sometimes willing to lend their strength to outsiders for suitable compensation. Many Bokors have become shrewd negotiators capable of turning nearly any situation to their advantage. Gatormen will usually accept payment in food or metal weapons, which they typically do not produce on their own. Others demands often the rights to pick clean the battlefield, laying claim to both the enemy dead and all they carried. Gatormen values such personal possessions, whether given as a gift or seized in battle, believing each imparts some of its previous owner's vitality or cunning to the recipient. Despite the contact with outside civilization it brings, this mercenary activity has prompted little change in Gatormen culture. Those who spend time fighting outside their swamps often bring back treasures and curiosities from their travels, but the Gatormen rarely attempt to adopt the engineering advances of other cultures. Gatormen remain the same tribal people they have been for millennia. Yeah, they don't. I've seen very few that carry any kind of firearms, and I think I've only ever seen like one Gatorman who carries a rifle, but he is a very specific type of dude. But let's continue. The Blindwater Congregation. The swamp is a stagnant place where change comes slowly, if at all. Like their waterlogged homelands for many millennia, the Gatormen of Western Amorn have resisted any major upheavals in their way of life. Now, however, the actions of an ambitious few threaten to alter the course of their history irreversibly. The powerful Gatormen warlock and Bokor known as Bloody Barnabas has united a number of large tribes around Blindwater Lake and Bloodsmead's marshes. Barnabas is truly ancient Gatorman who has been stalking the swamps and devouring his foes for centuries. Over time, he has conquered many Gatorman tribes, both near Blindwater and beyond, to add their strength to his growing host of warriors, uniting them in a perpetual cycle of carnage and death. Barnabas aspires for nothing short of godhood, to become a blood-drenched, gape-mawed, immortal horror, even mightier than Kosk. To accomplish this, he seeks to gather a massive army of Gatormen, bogtrogs, and other swamp creatures beneath his banner and demonstrate his greatness in the extent that he will compel them to worship. He intends to lead his army in conquest after conquest until, soaked in the gore of thousands, he will push his followers into one final grand confrontation. It is his hope that when he finally falls in battle, the dark energy of countless deaths inflicted in his name, coupled with the adoration of his living servants, will trigger an apotheosis that will enable him to transcend his own death and join the ranks of the gods. Barnabas is a feared and respected leader, but his grand design requires an attention and detail for which he has little patience. This has created an opportunity for other powerful Gatormen warlocks, such as Caliban the Grave Walker, to take over this task in which himself is not interested. An incredibly potent Gatorman Bokor, Caliban is cold, calculating, and pragmatic, where Barnabas is ruthless, even recklessly ambitious. His knowledge of Gatorman magic and ritual is unequaled, and he can call forth ancient and powerful spirits to do his bidding and lend strength to his various causes. Though he willingly aids Barnabas in his mad goals, Caliban is no fool. He has no intentions of letting his own life force fuel the warlord's ambition. Instead, he acts as a guiding hand behind Barnabas' conquest and campaigns of domination, subtly turning the war host to his own ends. Despite Caliban's vast mystical lore and access to powerful spiritual allies, his own goals are more earthbound, An exceedingly intelligent and progressive Gatorman, he wishes to see his people grow beyond the collection of small tribes scattered across the swamps and marshes of Western Amoran. He sees the work started by Barnabas in the Blindwater as a first step towards a larger unification of the Gatormen. Caliban envisions a day when the swamps belong to his people and his people alone, and all who enter their murky depths will pay tribute or feed the Gatormen with their flesh. Barnabas is an integral part of Caliban's plans. He will use the ancient warrior and his legend to bring the Gatormen together, and when Barnabas finally expires in a blaze of carnage, Caliban will find another to take his place at the fore of his growing Gatorman army. The Bloodsmeeds boast a large population of bog-trogs, which have long battled the Gatormen for control of the swamps. With Barnabas' unification of many of the larger Gatorman tribes, the tide of the age-old battle quickly turned and Barnabas completely eradicated the dominant bog-trog tribes in the Bloodsmeed. Before Barnabas could complete his wholesale slaughter of the Thornwood Trogs, however, Caliban intervened and proposed a better solution. Spare the Bog-Trogs and exchange them for service to the congregation. With little choice, the Bog-Trogs agreed, and Caliban has made heavy use of their stealth and ambush tactics in further conquest, both in the Bloodsmeads and beyond. At Caliban's direction, Barnabas has collected Gatorman warriors from the March Fells and the Fen Marshes, and he intends to continue to spread the word of his deeds to the farthest corners of the continent. To have two of the most powerful warlocks of the species working together is a potent boon to the congregation. Not only does their magic skill provide tremendous aid to the Gatorman host, their ability to call forth mighty reptilian warbeasts from the depths of the swamps lend great might to the Blindwater Congregation. The monstrosities that serve Barnabas and Caliban are drawn from the remote depths of various swamps and bogs, and many have never been seen outside the myths and legends of those humans that call these regions home. Though often employed by the powers fighting on the fringes of Western Amoran, the Gatormen of Blindwater have taken little away from the associations beyond one thing. They have awoken the allure of ambition and conquest. If bloody Barnabas and Caliban have their way, the swamps of Western Amoran will soon vomit forth a tide of blood and death, and those that once used the Gatormen to fight their battles will fall beneath the snapping jaws and scaly tread of a terrifying Gatorman horde. Yeah, these guys are definitely becoming even more of a threat, even though they didn't have much effect on outside cultures outside the swamps. It seems that is, or has been, changing for a bit, and we will see if most likely, since this is all old lore, most know that bloody Barnabas did ascend at that point. But it is very interesting that the entire Blindwater Congregation is based on one trying to become a god and one just trying to unify all of the Gatormen underneath one banner, which is very interesting. But let's, I have a couple side notes here that we're going to read over real quick. We have this picture of the leading congregation warlocks. We have the symbol of Bloody Barnabas and the symbol of Caliban, the Gravewalker. Gatorman warlocks, those able to bond with and control beasts, are rare. Barnabas and Caliban are among their greatest of these. I just think it's neat. Anytime you see symbolism that you can use, just makes it very, very nice. And if you think these are neat, you can pause it there to take a gander at them, see all the cool skulls and all the symbols that they put on those. And then it looks like we have an army makeup here in the archives here that we're going to read over real quick. Caliban's Cadre, the snapping jaws of the Gravewalker. Leadership, of course, is Caliban the Gravewalker, then the Bokers of Egric, Harkrath, Nigor, and Vorag. And then its assets include 30 Bogtrogs, since we know Caliban likes using Bogtrogs, 4 Croak Hunters, 12 Feral Geists, 50 Gatormen Posse Warriors, 4 Black-Tide Wrestlers, 6 Bull Snappers, and 3 Ironhide Spitters. Which, I always find the assets kind of cool, because like on the smaller armies, I feel like if you ever saw like, you know, full hosts, these are actually, you could actually make these, like literally in game. I don't know how many points that would be, but it would be super cool to see like huge battles like that where you have an entire host going to town on each other. But that's just me. You'd have to figure out the points and all that stuff. It'd be a very, very large game, which I have played very large games. I've played up to 200-point games, and the chaos that ensues with those games and the amount of time and, you know, the back and forth that goes on those games are always very exciting to see. But Yeah. Caliban the Gravewalker is an organized power behind the mad ascension of Bloody Barnabas, and it is largely left to the powerful Gatormen warlock to command the great host of swamp creatures that constitute the Blindwater Congregation. However, Caliban never travels anywhere without a hand-picked group of Gatormen bulkers and warriors, as well as his favored war beast brought to him from the Fen Marshes. Unlike many bulkers, Caliban does not always favor the direct and ferocious assault upon his enemies. When he and his personal warband enter battle, he prefers subterfuge and misdirection to bring down his foes. Such tactics have allowed him to defeat far more powerful adversaries than normally possible for a warband size he commands. Caliban and his cadre have single-handedly scored a number of decisive victories for the Gatormen, and have gone a long way in spreading the mysterious and deadly reputation of the Blindwater Congregation, particularly in the southern swamps. Most recently, they intercepted a large group of Trollkin traveling towards the Thornwood through the Bloodsmead marshes. A pair of dire trolls and a number of full-blood trolls supported the Trollkin, and the Trollblood forces outnumbered Caliban and his warbeast 2-1. Caliban, showing true reptilian patience, simply waited for the trolls to enter the area of deep and stagnant waters rich with energies of death from the countless people who have drowned there. As the Trollkin struggled to negotiate the deep swamp, Gatormen, bogtrogs, and massive reptilian warbeasts suddenly rose up from the mire to surround them completely. Caliban invoked his will to call on the dark powers of that place, and what followed was unmitigated slaughter. The Trollkin were torn to pieces by Caliban's warbeasts or assaulted by unending waves of dark, death-fed magic he sent forth. This victory over the Trollkin netted the Gatormen an impressive array of metal weapons and armor, and further cemented Caliban's reputation as a bulker of unequaled skill. And that is what we know about the Gatormen and the Blindwater Congregation. These guys are terrifying and ginormous Gatormen, standing 7 feet tall, and with all of their array of quote-unquote allies, both forced and not forced allies they have. But yeah, these guys are amazing on the battlefield. Of course, they are considered a minor faction, so there's not nearly as many choices with these guys. But they all have different ranges. They all have. Some are really good at melee. Some are fantastic at running gun lines and things like that. It really depends on how you want to build them. I always enjoy having as many Gatormen on the field as I can, just because they're cool models. They're big. They're bulky. They have very gnarly looking weapons, and if you're into painting blood, these guys are definitely people that like being covered in gore. So yeah, I recommend these guys if you like them. But keep on the lookout. We are going to have our Professor Clocksworth reading over the short-term lore, and then eventually in the future I will be reading over their full lore from the archives, as well as reading over their Mark IV stats as well, so you can see all the fun stuff that they're up to. But yeah. But be on the lookout, and thank you guys so much. If you are enjoying these, please hit that like button. Please comment. Please share all of these with your friends and fellow gamers alike, because that does help the channel grow. And if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed, because if you are into Warmachine lore, we post it almost every single day from every aspect of Warmachine, and we actually just have gotten all of the older No Quarter magazine, so we will be pulling in lore from there as well. So we have pulled in the guts and gears and all of those fun articles as well. So it has really expanded our archives and lore base. So we'll be reading that in the future as well, once we get everything categorized and running through. And also a big thank you to Steamforge Games for taking on the mantle of Warmachine and letting us continue to read this fantastic lore on the channel. And without further ado, class dismissed.